Said she had this wish that it would be turned into a medrash, library.
L'chaim. In 1912, the Rebbe Rashab said that there are two Yortzites. There is a Yortzheit, we say Kaddish, Neshama should be elevated. And there is a Yortzheit, we say Kaddish, that we are elevated, that we are connected to the Baal hilula, and when he goes up, we go up with him. The Rebbe Rashab said, 100 years is a complete number. There's 10 Sfiras, 10 times 10 is 100, and it's 100 years of the Istalkus, the hilula of the Alter Rebbe, and because he is going up in a high place, we must make sure to connect with him, so we go up with him. The Rebbe Rashab sent a delegation of 3 Chassidim to go mishtateach at the kever in Hadich of the Alter Rebbe, and that should be for all the Lubavitcher Chassidim. In the following year, 101 years of the Yortzheit, he did the same thing, and Maizeda said his father, Rebbe Elchanan Morozov, was one of the 3 Chassidim, and his father told him all about that trip. So now we're at 200 years. At 200 years, 100 years is 200 years. Mashiach is always about 200. It's Kefel. So we want to connect to be close to the Baal Hatanya. 200 years of the Yortzheit. So in honor of the Yortzheit to the Alter Rebbe, it's not only a Farbrengen tonight. In Mitzvah Hashem, it will be tonight, and it will be a complete Shabbos. In honor of the Yortzheit to the Alter Rebbe, 200 years. This is a Chanukas Habayis of a library of Chassidus, of Musar, of Machshava, of Pnimiyas HaTorah, which will be called Heichel HaBaal Shem Tov. There is an individual who worked for 6 months. B'chol me'oitcha. B'chol me'oitcha, Chazal say, can mean 2 things. With all your money and all your heart, with Mesiras Nefesh. This individual did both. With all Esa, Koiches, and Nefesh, and with all his 10 fingers, to actually design this place, to make it work. Complete 6 months. Complete devotion to make this beautiful library, which will Mitzvah Hashem shine a light in our life, in the life of Yidden, the Klal Yisrael, and Midwood Flatbush. I give a big yashakoyach to the Gabbai of Beis Menachem Mendel Rabbi Yosef Mos. L'chaim, l'chaim. There should be the Nehoira Malya, the light of the Alter Rebbe that shines at the completion of 200 years of that Istalkus. When the Alter Rebbe is Oila, that in Mitzvah Hashem, all of us at Beis Menachem Mendel should connect and go up. And Befrat, our beloved Gabbai, Rabbi Yosef Shiachya, that should have the Nehoira Malya should shine in his life, and it should guide him Begashmis and Beruchnis. Chaim. We're going to have the pleasure in Mitzvah Hashem to Farbrengen tonight with a mashpia who had showed many Yidden the path of the Alter Rebbe, and brought the sweetness of Chassidus under their palate. A mashpia, a mentor, a Ahavas Yisrael, a writer. We want to thank him very much for coming here tonight to Farbrengen with us. It'll be tonight, and Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow night, 8 o'clock in Beis Menachem Mendel. It'll be for men and women. Also Shabbos morning, before Musaf, he will speak. The schedule is 8 o'clock is Tehillim, 8 till 9:30. 9:30 is a Sheikh Chassidus. Before Musaf, Rabbi Friedman will speak. And also, in Mitzvah Hashem, after the davening, there will be a Kiddush Rabbah. Everyone is invited. And also, then, Rabbi Friedman will Farbrengen with us. So, tonight, in Mitzvah Hashem, join us as we connect to the Alter Rebbe, and we elevate ourselves to the 201 first Yortzheit with HaChosid, HaMashpia, Rabbi Manis Friedman.
We're getting good at this. Ganze Stück, der ganze.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It's interesting that in the early years, when Chassidus was first being published, a maimer, a recorded maimer of the Rebbe, was called Abichul. Abichul Chassidus, which is kind of informal, to say the least. And one of the signs, one of the evidence that a person really is connected and has got it and has absorbed it and has become it is not when you sit and study formally like a shiur, but when you're sitting and talking dvarim b'teilim. In fact, you're talking Lashon Hara, and without realizing it, from the Lashon Hara, verrät man sich in Chassidus. By accident. You're sitting and talking, and without realizing it, all of a sudden, you're on a Chassidische subject, nicht melernt. You're not studying it formally, it's conversation. The Mishnah says, two people who are sitting and learning, yesh beineim divrei Torah, the Shechina comes, but la'asid lavei, concerning the time of Mashiach, it says, oz nidberu. When Mashiach comes, we'll sit and talk. Casual, natural. But what will our talk be? Godliness. Because that will become our casual conversation. If the only time you talk about the Eibishter is when you're davening or learning from a sefer, so there's the taich. There's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Haisali demosi lechem yemon v'layla. My tears were my staple, my bread, day and night. Be'emer elai, when people would say to me, Kol hayem, all day long, ayei elekecha. David HaMelech was suffering. He had to run away, he had to hide, he had enemies, his own family, a whole list of problems. That didn't bother him so much. But when people said to him, no, where is your God? How come he doesn't take care of you? That hilula Hashem, that bothered him more. That's the simple meaning of that pasuk. A deeper meaning is, people would say to him, Kol hayom ayei alekecha. I see you have a God. In the morning, you put on tefillin. I see you have an Eibishter. At night, you say Krishma before you go to sleep. You have an Eibishter. But Kol hayom, the rest of the day, you're going about your business. You're doing what you need to do. There's no sign. It's not visible. It's not evident that you have a God. So all day long, you're without, you're godless. And for that he was crying. But when they said to me, Kol hayayim hayeh elekecha, where is your Eibishter all day long? You forgot about him. So if the only time we talk about the Eibishter is formal learning, then it means that we're strangers. That we and the Eibishter are strangers. When the Eibishter becomes your casual conversation, that's bringing the Shechina lamata. That's bringing down the Shechina lamata. So I'm dressed for the occasion. This is informal. We're here to talk, not to learn. And in some sense, that's what a Farbrengen is. Farbrengen is such an informal word, such an informal occasion. What are we going to do? Come over to my house. What's going to happen? But Farbrengen. Farbrengen means we'll spend time. It doesn't sound formal. It doesn't sound holy. It doesn't sound special. You'll come, we'll sit, we'll talk. But what will we talk? What comes natural? Our job is to make the Eibishter, to make Hashem comfortable in this world. How do we make him comfortable? Well, how do we make him uncomfortable? What makes him uncomfortable? If we treat the Eibishter like he's a visitor from Mars, that the Eibishter belongs in Shamayim. Hashamayim, Shamayim LaHashem. But Ha'aretz, this is not his place. So when he comes and we daven, or we do a mitzvah, or we say a dvar Torah, we're inviting him to come visit. But this is not his place. And as soon as the dvar Torah is over, he has to go back. Like the malachim on Friday night. Beyachem l'sholem, berchuni l'sholem, and then tzeitzcha l'sholem. This is not your place. I want to sit down and eat. If a malach is standing there, it ruins my appetite. Then if we're not comfortable with him, that makes him uncomfortable. So let's take a look at a few powerful, life-changing chidushim in Teves Chassidus that the Alter Rebbe brought. By the way, the Alter Rebbe said that unlike the Baal Shem Tov, who performed miracles constantly, the Alter Rebbe said, miracles is not my style. It's not. I don't do miracles. What he meant was, there's a time when it's necessary to cancel nature, to cancel Teva, and show the world what is higher than nature, above nature, the supernatural. In the times of the Baal Shem Tov, that was very necessary, because people were very defeated after the pogroms and the Shabtai Tzvi, and it was a very low time. And to sit and learn with people and to ask them to understand and to pay attention wasn't very realistic. They needed something that would break them out of this feeling that by nature, b'teva, things are not going to go good. We can't. Look at the way the world is. We can't survive like this. So the Baal Shem Tov had to reveal to them that Teva doesn't decide. Teva doesn't dictate. Nature is not the authority over life. On the contrary, we are here to elevate nature, to change nature. But how did he show that? Through miracles. The Alter Rebbe said, that's not my avodah. My avodah is not to disturb nature. My avodah is to bring godliness into nature. Not by skipping it, not by canceling it. Make nature holy. Miracles disturb nature. Yeah. So there's that famous story that a mother came with a child who couldn't talk. And the child went over to the Rebbe with a note from his mother about the father. The father was missing, and the mother needed to know where the father was. So she wrote a note, and the boy went and gave it to the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe said to the boy, go tell your mother that your father is in Leipzig, whatever. The boy goes and says to his mother, the Rebbe zog that Tati is in Leipzig. So people came to the Alter Rebbe, and they said, you said you don't do miracles. Here was a child who never talked in his life, and you cured him. So the Rebbe said, how was I supposed to know that he can't talk? But when a tzaddik says, this and this should happen, it happens. One of the explanations why Taka the Alter Rebbe didn't do miracles, although miracles happened all the time, a miracle means seeing something that is the step above nature. A tefach higher than nature, you see l'mayla min hateva. What does it mean, one tefach higher? Teva comes from the Sviras HaMalchus. Malchus is called Eretz. Teva comes from Sviras HaMalchus. So if you go up one level above Malchus, which is Yesod, there you see miracles. The Alter Rebbe was Chochmah. That's 10 levels higher than Eretz. When you're 10 levels higher than Eretz, you don't disturb the Eretz. So miracles was not the Alter Rebbe's thing. That's why the Tzemach Tzedek once said that the Alter Rebbe was given a gift by a Chassid. He was given a silver snuff box. The Alter Rebbe didn't use snuff, so the box was really not very useful. So the Rebbe took the lid, the cover of the box, which was a shiny silver, and he used it as a mirror to check his tefillin to see if the tefillin are straight. Because using a regular mirror is a pshashayla of simlas isha. So that when the Tzemach Tzedek told that story, he said, "Wait, don't think that the Zayde broke the lid off the box. There was a pin, like a hinge, that connected the lid to the box, and he removed the pin, but he didn't break it off. Dem Zayden's derech is nicht brechen, not to disturb nature, not to break, but to bring out the beauty that is in nature, the godliness that is in nature itself. How l'mayla mehateva is in teva." So let's take a look at a few things, because there are so many great giluyim that the Alter Rebbe brought. There's a story in Tanakh, in Navi, about the wife of Evadia. Evadia Hanavi passed away a young man, and he left his wife with debt and with 2 children. So the Torah tells the story that Isha Achas, there was one woman, Menashei b'nei Hanaviyim, a wife of a Navi, and Tzoako el Elisha, and she cried to Elisha. And she said, Avdecha ishi meis, my husband died, and he was a Yorei Shamayim, but he left me with debts, and now the collector, the Neisha, is coming to take my children because I can't pay. Elisha says to her, what do you have left in the house? She said, I have nothing, except osuch shomen, an oil pitcher. So the Navi said, Elisha said, go shali loch kelim min achutz, kelim reikim al tamiti. Get as many empty jars and vessels as you can, bring them home, close the door, and pour from your oil pitcher into all these empty vessels. So she does this, and all the empty vessels are filled with oil because the pitcher miraculously. Then she comes back to the Navi and she tells him, and the Navi says, sell the oil and you will live, you and your children will live on the profit. The Alter Rebbe explained the story like this. Isha is a reference to the neshama. Neshama is Lashon Nekeva. In our relationship with the Eibishter, sometimes he is our father and we are his children. Sometimes he is the husband and we are the wife. So the neshama is a feminine, and when it comes down into a body, it becomes like a prophet. Not a major prophet, a minor prophet. The neshama hears the Eibishter, the Baskol. So it's a little bit of a Navi. A Navi hears clearly, every neshama hears a little bit. That's called Menashei b'nei Hanaviyim. Every neshama, when it comes down and becomes a little Navi, cries. Tzoaka. Who does she cry to? Tzoaka el Elisha. Elisha means the Eibishter, who answers and responds to your prayers. It may have 2 words. The Eibishter's name and Sha'ah, responding. What is the neshama crying? The neshama says, Avdecha ishi meis. Avdecha, I served you, not your servant. Avdecha, I served you in heaven, ishi, with a holy fire. Eish Yud. But now that I come down into a body, my ahava, my fiery ahava, the eish, the holy eish, has become corrupted. I love myself, I love money, I love pleasure. I don't know already which ahava is the real one. My ahava is killed. The ahava died. And yira, yeah, I used to have yira. Avdecha hoya yorei Hashem. So in heaven, I had ava, I had yira. It was wonderful. And now it's gone. So what's the problem? The problem is, I know that I have to do mitzvahs, and I will do the mitzvahs, but the mitzvah without ahava and without yira is like an empty vessel. It's like a body without a soul. Keguf b'lei neshama. So yes, I can do the mitzvah, but I can't serve you. I have nothing to give. I have nothing to offer. The mitzvah is your mitzvah. So I'll do your mitzvah. But what do I bring to this relationship? Chab garnished. The Eibishter says, Elisha says, you don't have Ava v'yira, but what's left? There are 10 koiches. You don't have Ava v'yira. Do you have Netzach? Do you have Teves? The Neshama says, Ein l'shivchos chakoil babayis. Everything I have, the Nefesh HaBahamis also has, and it gets corrupted, and then it's verpatchkit and vermischt, and it's not good. So the Neshama cries. I don't want to just do mitzvahs without putting something. The Rebbe would give out dollars to give to Tzedakah. So people would go and give the dollar to Tzedakah. The point was, give my dollar, but add your dollar. So the Neshama says, I can't add anything, I can't give anything. And that feels terrible. And that's why Chassidus, by the way, that's why Chassidus came, because people were asking, how do you serve? I know how to put on tefillin, but how do you turn that into an avodah? So what does the Eibishter say to the neshama? And of course, we're talking about everybody's neshama. It's not something that happened in the times of Elisha. The Eibishter says to the neshama, you're right. The mitzvahs you'll do will be like empty vessels. Kelim reikim. Aber kelim reikim al tamiti. Don't take it lightly. Don't dismiss empty vessels. They can be very, very precious. How? Pour your oil into it. You don't have ahava, and you don't have yira. You can't serve me with love, and you can't serve me with fear. Fine. Give me your oil. Fill the vessel, fill the mitzvah with your oil instead of your love and fear. What is the oil? We know that in Torah there are 3 parts. There's a part of Torah that is called water. Hey kol tzama l'chol hamayim. Ein mayim ela Torah. Then there's a part of Torah that is called wine. Yeina shel Torah. And then there's a part of Torah that is called shemen, the oil. The difference is, water is absolutely essential. Without water, nothing happens. There's no life. Water is everywhere, and water is open. It's not hidden. That's the part of Torah that is nigla, it's revealed, it's the essential of life. Without that, there's nothing. So the simple pshat, the obvious meaning of Torah, that's the water of Torah. The wine is not everywhere, and it's not revealed. It's hidden within the grape. So to get wine, you have to extract it from the grape. That's already a deeper part of Torah that takes a little more effort to find it. You don't see it immediately. You have to dig a little deeper. That's like medrash. Medrash goes a little deeper, the rest of the story. But it's not very hard to get wine out of a grape. Even a child can do it. But then there is the core, the etzem, the essence of Torah. That's like the oil. To get a drop of oil out of an olive is very difficult. You have to have a machine to do it. What is the essence of Torah? What is the wine of Torah? What is the water of Torah? More or less we know. The same is true in the neshama. Every neshama has a part that is water, a part that is wine, and a part that is oil. The oil of the neshama means the very fact that the neshama is Jewish. I'm Jewish. I don't know anything. I don't feel anything. I don't experience anything. I have no sensitivities. I have no emotions. I have no feelings. But am I Jewish? Oh, yeah, right, I'm Jewish. The Eibishter says to the neshama, in Gan Eden, you had Ahava. You offered me your Ahava. You offered me your Yira. The emes is, I don't need Ahava, and I don't need Yira. What I need is you. You. The oil. If you give me you, that's even better than giving me your love. What does it mean? So many places in Chassidus, it uses the example of the Kal Shebekalim, the lowest of the low, the most estranged Jew, who does nothing, who knows nothing, but when they ask him to bow to an idol, there's no way he can do it. He can't do it. He doesn't understand why. He doesn't understand himself. But he can't do it. Why? You're asking me to not be Jewish, that I can't do. You want me to not be frum? Fine. You want me to act like non-Jew, to become assimilated? Yes. But not to be a Jew? No. I can't do that. That means your identity, the fact that you are a Jew, connects you to the Eibishter even when everything else fails. So why doesn't he bow to an idol? Not because he knows that Avodah Zarah, Yaharik Val Yaver, it's a big Aveda, it's a terrible Aveda. He doesn't know that. All he knows is a Jew doesn't do that. I remember not long ago, 10, 12 years ago, when Russians were coming out of Russia, Russian Jews, and they would come to Minnesota. They didn't know anything, and they didn't care about anything, and they weren't interested in anything. But they all had a bris. Because somebody said to them, that's what a Jew does. Everything else, they said, that's what Frumme Yidden do. Orthodox Jews put on tefillin. Okay, I'm not Orthodox, let me up. But Jews, so they would come to a rabbi and they would say, what Jews do, yeah? That's what I want. Why do you want it? That's what Jews do. I'm a Jew. That's the oil. So the neshama says to the Eibishter, cries to the Eibishter, that the animal soul, the Yetzer Hara, is taking away my children. Children means love and fear. Because love and fear come from the brain and is born in the heart. So they are the children. The Eibishter says to the neshama, give me your oil. When you do a mitzvah, do it from your oil. The Kal Shebekalim doesn't bow to an Avodah Zarah because that's not what a Jew does. Do every mitzvah that way. Don't put on tefillin because of your ahava or because of your yira. Put on tefillin because that's what a Jew does. Because you're a Jew. I had a story, a guy, a retired elderly man in Minnesota. He tells me, I was very surprised, he says, you know, I used to live in New York. When I was working, I lived in New York. And I had an office in the Empire State Building. He said, I came down one day to go to lunch, and this young man comes over to me and says, are you Jewish? Excuse me, are you Jewish? And he was there with the tefillin truck. So I wasn't in the mood. I said no. And I continued walking. He says, that night I couldn't sleep. I couldn't. What did I say? I'm not Jewish? He couldn't forgive himself. I said I wasn't Jewish. The next day, he went down to lunch and went looking for the truck. He didn't know that it only came on Friday. So every day of the week, he says, I went looking for that truck. He said, what did I do? How could I say such a thing? Couldn't sleep a whole week. Finally, Friday, he hears the music playing, he runs to the truck. Before he can say anything, a bachel says to him, excuse me, are you Jewish? He says, of course I'm Jewish. So the guy said, would you like to put on tefillin? Of course I'll put on tefillin. Would you like to take home a pushkin? Avada. How about candles for your wife? Yes. He wasn't going to say no again to anything. That's called the oil. Why, only when it comes to bowing to an idol, do we suddenly become so Jewish that we can't? But when it comes to every other mitzvah, there's a possibility. Because every other mitzvah, we think we have to do it with kavanah, with ava, with tainug. Do the mitzvah, every mitzvah, because of your oil. B'stayid. What do we tell children? How do you raise a child who keeps mitzvahs? You tell him to make a bracha because he loves the Eibishter. You tell him to make a bracha so that he can be frum. You tell him to make a bracha because if he doesn't get the cookie. Not in this house. In my house, you make a bracha. Is that what it is? Or do you say to him, "Tu bist chayid, bist hayid, mach a bracha v'ayid. This is your oil." So the Eibishter says to the neshama, you're surprised that what happens when the neshama comes down and it loses all of its chushim and its talents. You're surprised. I'm not surprised. I know. I want your oil more than I want your ava v'yira. And here's what happens. If you do the mitzvah with your oil, then at ubanayich, then you and your emotions and your ava and your yira will come alive, tichyi, will come alive, banesar, better than before. If you have ava, it's only a midah. But if you first give me your oil, you are a Jew. You are mine, and I am yours. Then if you love me, oh, that's a different ahava. That's a different ahava. It's like the difference between a stranger who likes you, who loves you, or your children who love you. Stam ahava, okay, it's nice. If it goes away, it goes away. We've been friends for 40 years. I've had enough of you. Lamed up, sei mir gesund. That's it. Our friendship is over. Okay, we can live with that. But if you're my child, then your ahava has a completely different meaning. It's not stam ahava. It's a piece of you. And I want. Your ahava, that's a different thing. So that's what the neshama is told when it comes down in Elam Hazeh. And that's what the Torah is telling us in the story in the Navi. Not about a woman who lived a long time ago, but about our neshama. That's called nishmosa de'eraisa. You see how in every story, in every word, in every halacha, in every mitzvah, there's a neshama behind it. Torah talks to the neshama. Or more specifically, the oil of Torah talks to the oil of the neshama. The water of Torah talks to the water of the neshama. So what is Chassidus? Nobody knew this until the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe revealed the neshama, not the ruach, not the nefesh. The neshama, the oil that makes the Yeridas HaNeshama a blessing, not a torture or a disaster. L'chaim.
Yeah.
The Rebbe, I think the Rebbe Rashab saw two Chassidim, Lamdim, who were traveling, and they stopped to rest. And they were sitting in the grass. They had taken off their kapotas, their jackets, folded them up, and put them down on the grass. And they put their hat down on top of the jacket. And they were sitting and talking Chassidus. Not learning where they would put on the hat and put on the jacket. They were talking Chassidus. The Rebbe Rashab said, 5,600 and whatever years to the day of what that year was and what the day was. 5,000 so many hundred and so many years. This place, that location, that ground, has been waiting for these two Chassidim to sit and speak Chassidus, and by doing that, the place was elevated because it served its purpose in the plan of creation. Alter Rebbe asks a very simple question. The Torah says, "Karev elecha hadavar ma'od." It's very natural for you to serve the Eibishter with your heart, but we see that it's not like that. It is such a big kasha that it takes a whole Tanya to answer that kasha. But sometimes you ask a person who knows how to learn. So you don't have a kasha. Torah says, "Karev elecha hadavar ma'od." I don't see where that happens. And the reaction is, so what's your kasha? So what's the kasha? Torah says, "Karev elecha hadavar ma'od." You don't feel ahava. So what's the problem? So what's the problem? You don't feel, so you don't feel. No, but the Torah says that it's true of every Jew that karev le'rechaikahi, le'me'eva la'yomhi. It's not far, it's not on the other side of the ocean, it's very close. Okay, so Torah says, yeah, but I don't feel that. So what's the kasha? Torah says you should keep Shabbos. I know Jews who don't keep Shabbos. So what's your kasha? It's a kasha. By asking the kasha, before we even get to the answer, the Alter Rebbe is teaching us something really important. Torah is emes. Not emes in heaven. Emes on earth. So if the Torah says, Bereshis bara elikim es hashamayim, then there is a shamayim. And those philosophies that say there really is no shamayim, it's just an imagination. Torah says, Karev elecha, it is emes. That's why it's a kasha. If you dismiss it and you don't understand the kasha, it's because you're not convinced that Torah has to be true in fact. Torah is true in principle. Every Jew should love the Eibishter. And in heaven, when the neshama is in heaven, it does love the Eibishter. But it has to be true on earth also. So by asking the kasha, the Alter Rebbe is saying, if what the Torah says is not felt and experienced on earth, then we have a problem. Something is not right. A man came to the Alter Rebbe. He said, I give a lot of tzedakah. I have a lot of erchim. I'm very generous. I feed people. And I do it a lot. But now that I started learning Chassidus, I feel, I'm not sure that I'm doing it with an emes. I'm not sure how sincere I am. How can I know that I'm sincere? Because this was the beginning of Teves Chassidus, the earliest years. The Alter Rebbe said to him, after thinking about it, the Alter Rebbe said to him, that man, when you give him food and he was hungry, he enjoys it mitanemes. He enjoys the food sincerely. That was the Rebbe's answer. What kind of an answer was this? The man wants to know, I look inside myself, I want to be honest, I want to be real, I want to be sincere. I don't know if I'm sincere. What the Alter Rebbe was saying to him is a klal. It's a general principle in life, in Torah. When you're davening, you have to be sure that you're sincere. When you do a mitzvah, ben adam lemokim, you eat matzah on Pesach, you have to be sure that you're sincere. When it's a mitzvah ben adam lechaverei, this is not about you. Your sincerity here is not what's important. Tzedakah means you're giving somebody else what he needs. So what would make your giving tzedakah a sincere tzedakah? What would make it sincere is if you don't care whether you're giving it sincerely, you want to make sure that he enjoys it sincerely. If you want to feel that you're sincere, it's not tzedakah anymore. Now you're doing something for yourself, you want to feel good, you want a sign from heaven that you're okay, that you're ruining it. Sometimes kavanah is the worst thing. That's why they make a joke. That's why there's no bracha. For every mitzvah there's a bracha. Why don't you make a bracha before you give tzedakah? So the joke is, because until you finish your bracha with your kavanah, the poor man can starve to death. So first you have to give him. Well, once you give him, once you do the mitzvah, you can't make a bracha anymore. So there's no bracha. In other words, when it comes to tzedakah, skip your kavanah. Your kavanah is not important here. If you really want to be sincere, make sure that the hungry man gets exactly what he needs, not less. That's sincere tzedakah, not sincere mitzvah. Or to put it in different words, if a person says, Ahavas Yisrael is a big mitzvah, so I'm going to have Ahavas Yisrael. No thanks. Ahavas Yisrael means you love him because he's Jewish. You're loving him because it's a mitzvah. You're not doing it right. It's like, if there was no mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael, would you still have Ahavas Yisrael? Yes. Why? Because Jews are wonderful. You need a mitzvah to have Ahavas Yisrael? That can be very confusing. So if you're thinking, how do I know if I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael correctly? If that's what you're thinking, the answer is you're not doing it correctly. You're already wrong. You're wrong. there are certain things that they have to be emes. Ahavas Yisrael means you should love a Jew. Is it a big mitzvah? You didn't hear what I said. You should love a Jew. Is it a deraisa? It's a mitzvah deraisa. And what if I don't? What's going to be the punishment? Well, you're off target. You're off the subject. Ahavas Yisrael means every Jew is precious to you. Why? What do you mean why? Because he's a Jew. Imagine a couple of Talmidei Chachamim are sitting in the yeshiva over Gemaras, and they're having a debate. The mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael applies to which Jew? You're off target. Alter Rebbe spends a whole chapter in Tanya making sure that we get that, that we understand that. There was this children's book. I don't know if you can appreciate what bothers me. There was a children's book about a boy in a yeshiva who's the Malamed would take them as a group, as a trip, to the old age home to entertain the old folks. And this boy, the hero of the book, he didn't like it. He thought it was kind of weird, and it smelled bad, and it was creepy, and old people. He didn't see anything wonderful about going there. And they went again with this trip, and he went, and he was standing there with his friends, and they were singing a song, and he noticed that a very old-looking man in a wheelchair was looking at him and smiling. And he realized, when he came home, he told his mother, I realized that by going there, I did a really big mitzvah. That's the book. That's the book. It's a terrible book. It's a terrible Musar Haskell. You saw an old, lonely man, and you gave him pleasure, and you saw him smile. And what are you happy about? That you did a big mitzvah. Now, this is wrong. This is not Ahavas Yisrael. This is not even Menschlichkeit. You made an old man happy. What does it have to do with your mitzvah? It's his happiness that is important, not your mitzvah. But isn't it a mitzvah to make Jews happy? What are you mixing? For example, the Novi says, Ohafti eschem Omar Hashem. The Eibishter says, I love you. Where is there a mitzvah that the Eibishter has to love us? Is he doing a mitzvah? Does the Eibishter stop to think, wait a minute, is it a mitzvah for me to love Yidden? It's not a mitzvah. Oh, he's doing it with Nun Mishuras Hadin. He's going beyond the letter of the law. What? The Eibishter loves Jews. It's a mitzvah. It's a Jew. The Eibishter loves a Jew. So the Alter Rebbe says, what makes Ahavas Yisrael so precious, equal to Ahavas Hashem? Because when you love a Jew, you're loving who the Eibishter loves. Is it a mitzvah? We're talking about Ahavas Yisrael. What do you mean, is it a mitzvah? You know that famous story, the Apter, used to teach that every word in Torah is about Ahavas Yisrael. The whole Torah is one big love letter, Ahavas Yisrael. So there was a skeptic there, and he said to him, Rebbe, every word in Torah is Ahavas Yisrael. What about the word bolok? The word bolok. What does that have to do with Ahavas Yisrael? So the Alter said, are you kidding? Bolok is Rosh Teves. V'ahavta l'reyacha kamecha. So the Chassid said, V'ahavta is with a vav, not with a vez. And kamecha is with a kaf, not with a kuf. So the Alter said, head on my... I'm talking to you about Ahavas Yisrael, and you're worried about Digduk? You're correcting my spelling? We're talking about Ahavas Yisrael. You say, is it a mitzvah? Will I get a mitzvah if I do that? So when the Chassid asked the Alter Rebbe, how do I know if my tzedakah is sincere? The Alter Rebbe had to find a way of convincing this person that Ahavas Yisrael is real. It's a fact. Either you have it or you don't have it. The fact that it's a mitzvah, not a mitzvah, that's besides the point. Tell another story about the Alter Rebbe. This story everybody knows, that when the Alter Rebbe wanted to say Kiddush Levana, and he was on a boat, he wouldn't say Kiddush Levana until the oarsmen agreed to stop the boat. But when the boat stopped miraculously, he couldn't say Kiddush Levana. That is such an important ingredient in Avodas Hashem. In fact, the Rambam says in Hilchas Mashiach, Hilchas Malachim, you should not think, it should not enter your mind, al yale al hadas, that Mashiach is going to do miracles. And he proves it, whatever, he brings a raya. Why is it so important? And why is that true? Why won't Mashiach do miracles? All the tzaddikim throughout all of history who were not as great as Mashiach did miracles. Mashiach is not going to do any miracles. The meaning of it is, the whole point of creating a world and creating a Jewish people and giving us a Torah, the whole point of it is that this world, with all of its ugliness, with all of its limitations, with all of its grubbiness, will become holier than heaven. That's the goal, that's the objective, that's the purpose, and that's the promise. That if we do mitzvahs, the world will become a dira to the Eibishter, and it will be holier than heaven, which will justify the neshama leaving heaven and spending 80, 90, 100 years on earth with all of the problems, but it's all worth it if we make the world holier. What's going to happen when the world reaches a certain degree of holiness? Mashiach comes, and then the world is perfect. If you think that Mashiach is going to perform miracles, then you miss the whole point. A miracle means nature is a problem, so we have to rise above nature and do something miraculous. If the ocean is in the way and you need to go to Har Sinai, we need a miracle to get the ocean out of the way. If you think that when Mashiach comes, nature will still be a problem and we will need to have miracles, l'mayla min hateva, then you miss the whole point. The whole point is when Mashiach comes, the world will be holy. Why will you need miracles? Why will you need supernatural when nature itself is holy? So if you think that Mashiach is going to need to do miracles, you're still in Golus. You miss the whole point. The mashal is a king has a mountain right in the middle, very inconvenient. He needs to build a railroad and there's a mountain there. He has to get rid of the mountain. So what does he do? He announces that there's gold in the mountain and that whoever wants can come, get tools from the palace, and whoever digs in the mountain, whatever gold they find, they can keep. So of course everybody comes running. The gold rush. And they work and they clap and they hack and they completely remove the mountain. And there's no gold. But the king promised them gold. So when the mountain is gone and the king has what he needs, he comes from the palace with wagons full of gold, and he gives everybody who worked gold. So now he got what he needs, they got what they need, everybody's happy. The Rambam says, Aliyah al hadas. Don't you dare think that that's what the Eibishter is doing. The Eibishter tells us that if we use his tools, 613 tools, and we dig into Olam Hazeh, we're going to find gold. We're going to find holiness, godliness, nitzutze kedusha. It'll become holy. It'll become 1,000 years. We do it with Mesilas Nefesh. There's no gold. The world is not any holier. But the Eibishter promised. So the Eibishter will come from Gan Eden and give us gold min hashamayim. So everybody will be happy. The Eibishter has the mitzvahs that he needed. We get the reward that we wanted. Everybody's happy. Except for one thing. Torah is not emes. It was a nice trick, but not emes. So the Rambam says, don't you dare think that. Because HaTorah, emes la'olam u'ilmei olamim. If you think Mashiach has to do a miracle, then you think that the Eibishter is making this little trick like the king with the mountain. No. The world really is a treasure. And when you dig in it, you really will find godliness, greater than the godliness in heaven. Now let me let you in on a secret. Don't tell anybody. What is godlier than heaven? We say it sounds very nice. Not heaven on earth. No. Holier than heaven. What are you talking about? Nothing is holier than heaven. Nothing. We don't mean holier. We mean more godly. What does that mean? The Eibishter's pleasure that he gets from neshamas before he creates the world. It's an incredible pleasure. The Eibishter enjoys neshamas more than anything else in the world. B'mim nimlach b'nishmosem shel tzadikim. But it doesn't compare to the pleasure that the Eibishter gets from a yid when it's a neshama in a body. How does this world become more godly than heaven? It gives him more pleasure. It is a greater tainuk for the Eibishter to have a Jew in Olam Hazeh, in a guf, be his, than the pleasure that he gets from a neshama when it's in heaven without a guf. So in what way is Olam Hazeh godlier? It's a greater divine pleasure. So what's going to happen when the world is perfect? The Eibishter's pleasure in Yidden will finally be revealed. And we have no idea how great that pleasure is. Ayin lo ro'asa elikim zulasecha. No Navi could describe the pleasure that the Eibishter gets just from a Yid in a body. We can understand a little bit the pleasure the Eibishter gets from mitzvahs. Nachas ruach lefonai sho'amarti v'naser etzeini. We can understand the pleasure that the Eibishter gets when we learn Torah. Torah, the Eibishter's pleasure. Shashuyin. So the Navi can describe what's going to happen when Jews do mitzvahs and what's going to happen when Jews learn Torah. But what's going to happen after, when the Eibishter's pleasure is just the Jew? That the Navi could never describe, because you can't know it until it happens. So again, the Alter Rebbe turned our emunah into fact. Yiddishkeit is not a bunch of beliefs, a bunch of halachic principles, halachic constructs. Torah is emes. Ahava means ahava, not good intentions. Ahavas Yisrael means Ahavas Yisrael. When the Eibishter says Ahavti Eschem, it means ahava. It's not a poetic sentiment. It's real. And when it says that the world will become holy, it means really holy. No need for miracles. And that's basically what we mean when we say Torah emes, Moshe emes, Torah emes. What does it mean he's emes? It means there really was a Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe emes means his name was really Moshe. What is it? Not Yankel. What does it mean? It means what he told us was true. He didn't lie. You don't mean he was emes. You mean he was honest. No, it doesn't mean that. Moshe emes v'teirosei emes means whatever it says in Torah is the fact. Begashmias. Only until Mashiach comes, it can be hidden, you can't see it so clearly, but it is the fact. Chaim.
Russian Yid right over there with the sweater. There's a Russian Yid with the sweater. Right over there, you see by the pole? Yeah, it's his first time here. Yeah. The bread. Shkoyach sender. L'chaim. Hey, Yavutzo.
Chassid feels his comfort zone is by the end. That's his comfort zone. So for instance now, the Yidden is Matzah, the Babashis feel the comfort zone over here is based on Nachman. Is it temporary? We should always think that it's a temporary situation as opposed to leading to something that's a permanent situation.
Golus is temporary. Golus is temporary. Even the best part of Golus. Even the best part of Golus is temporary.
Yeah.
We read in the Parsha, last week's Parsha, this week's Parsha, the conversations between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Eibishter. It would be fascinating, I don't know if anybody ever did this, the Mefarshim, the Achreinim, to take together every conversation that Moshe Rabbeinu had with the Eibishter and see what the picture looks like when you put it all together. Last week, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Lo mahareisa lo hazeh. And the Eibishter said, Chaval al de avden v'lo mishtakchen. Avraham lehirer achar midaisai. The obvious question is, if the Eibishter wanted somebody like Avraham to go to Mitzrayim, to talk to Pari, why did he send somebody like Moshe Rabbeinu? If the Shlichus demanded the qualities of Avraham, so was Moshe right that he's Shlach no b'yat tishlach, I'm not the right person. You need somebody like Avraham. I'm not like Avraham. So why was the Eibishter seemingly upset with him? And also, is it really right? Is it even nice to compare one person to another? Why can't you be like him? It's not. It's not polite. I'm me. Was willst du von mir? You be like him. He's him. I'm me. Like the famous statement from Reb Zusha. I don't have to be Avraham Avinu. I have to be Zusha. Bechlal, how do we understand Moshe was wrong to ask? He was wrong? Moshe emes and Teirose emes, and he was wrong? There's Emunas Hashem and there's Yedias Hashem. Avram Avinu, his Aveda, all the others, their Aveda was in the field of Emunah. Ben Sholi Shonim Hikir Avram as Beirei, it was a big, big accomplishment. He spread the Emunah. He taught others to have Emunah. He destroyed the Avodah Zarah. It was all about Emunah. The 10 Nisyonos, was all about emunah. The 10 tests. Moshe Rabbeinu was preparing the Yidden for Matan Torah. That's what the Eibishter said to him. Moshe Rabbeinu asked, "What am I doing? I'm the liberator. I'm going to take Yidden out of Mitzrayim. What is that? How is that my job?" And what did the Yidden do that they deserve to be taken out of Mitzrayim? What does the Eibishter say? What kind of answer is that? Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, I go talk to Padre Makis. My inyan is Torah. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. So what? Take them out of Mitzrayim and I'll teach them Torah. I should take them out of Mitzrayim. And what did they do to deserve to come out of Mitzrayim? So the Eibishter says, it's not what you deserve, it's not what they deserve, it's time for Matan Torah. What does it mean, Tavdu Nesolikim? Moshe Rabbeinu's whole inyan is Torah. And what is Torah? Ritzaynei and Chachmosei Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Torah means get to know the Eibishter. Know what he wants, know what he thinks. Chachmosei Ritzaynei. Every word in Torah tells you something more about the Eibishter. Moshe Rabbeinu's midah was to get to know the Eibishter. So at every opportunity, he probed a little deeper. What do you really mean? What do you... Tell me a little more. You're starting to say, what? Hareini noas kvedecha. What do you want? They're going to ask me, Mashmei, mo'emer elehem. What did he want? Tell me more. You're telling me that it bothers you that Yidden are in Mitzrayim. Really, it bothers you? What bothers you? How much does it bother you? How come it bothers you? I want to know you. When Moshe Rabbeinu asked questions, it's because he is a Chacham. Chacham asks questions. If your whole inyan is emunah, then you have no questions. Emunah doesn't need questions. But Chachma comes from questions. Shakla v'tarya. So Avraham, Moshe Rabbeinu's whole inyan was, his Avedas Hashem was Yedias Hashem. Matan Torah. Avraham Avinu's Aveda was Emunah. So what is the comparison? Why can't you be like Avraham? Because now is the Shnei Alofim Torah, and Torah comes by asking questions. So what do you mean I should be like Avraham? Avraham was before Matan Torah. The greatness of Avraham is not so much his emunah or his ahava, Avraham Ehavi. It was the tmimus of his ahava, the sincerity, the simplicity. You can have ahava that is complex and multi-layered and dramatic. Avraham's ahava was tmimus, straight, uncomplicated, emesdik. The Eibishter was saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to be like Avraham, not be Avraham. Avraham in his avodah was a tomim. Heyei Tomim. You in your Avodah should also be a Tomim. Because there's Tmimus, there is sincerity of the heart. Tmimus Halev, that's Avram Avinu. But there's also Tmimus HaMoyach, Tmimus HaSeichel. Your inyan is to ask questions. Your inyan is to come to know me, to get to know me, aber unkunst. Tmimus. Medrash makes an interesting statement. Medrash says, Mi yale bahar Hashem, umi yakum b'mkeim kodshe, neki kapayim, ubar levov. Interesting Medrash. The Medrash says, who is that pasuk talking about? Mi yale bahar Hashem. Who is it said about? It was said about Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was bar levov. Where do we see this? So the Medrash says, if a basar v'dam, if a human being would say to a human king what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibishter, he would be hanged for it. Achas doser. And Moshe Rabbeinu said it to the Eibishter, and he got away with it. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? When the Eibishter was angry about the egel, the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibishter, Lomo Hashem yechere apcha ba'amecha. What are you angry about? So the Eibishter said, what am I angry about? I just told them, and look what they're doing. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, they're showing gratitude, they're saying thanks to a potter, to a cow, because cows give milk. So what's so terrible to say thank you to a cow for giving milk? So the Eibishter said, Moshe, you too? You're making the same mistake? A cow doesn't give milk. I create the cow, I create the milk, I make it happen, I put them together. Cow is nothing. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, yeah, so that's what I'm asking you. What are you angry about? What are they bowing to? They're bowing to nothing. Was it's nothing. So the Medrash says the reason Moshe Rabbeinu got away with it is because when he said it, it was bar levov. He wasn't trying to be smart. It wasn't a chokhmah. He said what he felt honestly. Not he was like, I can outsmart the Eibishter. For that you get killed. Mendel Futerfas once told the story of the Baditcheva, that there was, it's a famous story, there were two brothers, a rich one and a poor one, and the poor one didn't have money for wood, for the fireplace, it was cold. So he came to the Baditcheva, and the Baditcheva said, you have a rich brother, how come he doesn't give you? He says, nah, he doesn't give me. So the Baditcheva put on the big pelts. It was a cold winter night. He went and knocked on the door of the rich brother. The rich brother came to the door in his shirts. And he invited the Baditcheva to come in. The Baditcheva said, no, I'm just stopping for a minute. I was learning a Gemara, it's a difficult Gemara, I don't understand the Gemara. This guy standing there by the open door, the way that Mendel tells the story. So he had a big stomach, and it was hard for him to stand on his feet. And it was cold, but he had derech eretz, the Baditcheva. The Baditcheva starts with a pilpul, with a meiset, a kasha, and the Teves, and he's listening. But he's freezing on the Pempike Grace, on the Fiesen to Envey. And 5 more minutes, until finally, with all the Derech Eretz, he couldn't take it anymore. He said, Rebbe, you want something? So Baditcher said, yeah. By Miras Asimcha, yeah? Whatever I tell people to do, they always do it. So I never get to fulfill the mitzvah of not saying what people won't do. Now, I'm fulfilling that mitzvah. So he said, I won't do it, I'll do it. Whatever you say, I'll do it. He says, now you'll do that. Now that you're freezing, now you'll do it. Give your brother the So that Mendel tells the story, and everybody's enjoying the way he describes it and the way he tells it. And then he says, you think the Baditshiva was chitre? You think the Baditshiva was shrewd and he manipulated? Chas v'shalom, he wasn't shayach to a letzonus and he wasn't shayach to chitre. The nachash is orim. It's not holy. Every step of the way was absolutely sincere. Bar levov. So the Eibishter says to Moshe Rabbeinu, your inyan is to ask and to want to know me and to draw me out so that I tell you more about me, aber unkunst. Like Avraham. Avraham in his Ahava was tmimizdik. You in your Chochmah should be betmimis. And it was, and that's why the Pasuk says, Mi Yale Bahar Hashem, Bar Levov. Who is that? Moshe Rabbeinu. So the real Godliness of Moshe Rabbeinu is not that he understood Torah and he knew Torah and he was a Chacham and he was Das Elyon. All of it was Tmimis. And that's why Moshe Emes. Generally, we don't combine Chachma and Emes. Chachma is Chachma, not Emes. By Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Emes and Torah Emes. Because it was Bar Levov, it was completely betmimus. So, what does Moshe Rabbeinu want? On every occasion, Moshe Rabbeinu says, and what about you? Hareini noas kvedecha. What does Moshe Rabbeinu want? So the Rebbe once told a story about the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe said to a Melamed, you have a chiyuv of parnosa for your family. I have a chiyuv to teach my son Aleph Beis. So let's switch. I'll give you the money to feed your family, and you teach my son Aleph Beis. We all know the story. So the Chassid said to the Alter Rebbe, darf man doch wissen was an Aleph is? What's an Aleph? And that's when the Alter Rebbe told him with the nigun, by the Alter Rebbe's nigun, the way he spoke, a Yud von oben, a Yud von unten, und a Kav Yira Shemayim. Or dos is an Aleph. So when the Rebbe told the story, he added one little detail. The Chassid asked, "What is an Aleph?" He didn't know what an Aleph is. So the Rebbe said, "Der Chassid in nicht gewinnt kein Narischer." So he asked, "What is an Aleph?" In other words, he saw an opportunity. Yeah, you want me to teach Aleph? No, what's an Aleph? It's, like, it's an opportunity, it's an occasion to get a little, to extract a little Chassidus benegea to an Aleph. What is the neshama of an Aleph? In other words, he was smart enough not to miss the opportunity. Moshe Rabbeinu never missed an opportunity. I should go talk to the Yidden. What do you think about the Yidden? They're not going to listen, right? I just want to see what. So the Eibishter says, "That stuff, meine Kinder." Oh, okay, good. We're hearing something here. He always had that chokhmah to find out more about the Eibishter. So he wasn't doubting the Eibishter. Maharer achar midaysai. Chas v'shalom. Avraham Avinu trusted me. You don't trust me. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't trust the Eibishter. Come on. Maharer achar midaysai means you're constantly thinking, was noch kemen do wissen midosei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Eibishter says, that's wonderful. Aber tmimus. No, unchachmas. What did Moshe Rabbeinu want? After the Egel, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hareini no es kvedecha. What was he asking? The Yidden were over on Avodah Zarah. Moshe Rabbeinu figured out how to get the Eibishter to forgive them for Avodah Zarah. But part of the forgiveness was Chusavos. Lama Yemru Mitzrayim, it will be Achil Hashem. And together with all these things, there was Salachti Kidvarecha. The Eibishter forgave them. Now Moshe Rabbeinu says, aha. So you even Avodah Zarah, there can be Rachmanis and there can be. And what happens if we do it again? What's going to be when the schus oveis is tamu? Are you going to forgive us? Do you have that much rachmanas that you'll forgive us even a second time, even without schus oveis? Hareini nos kvedecha. Avi vayt. How deep is your forgiveness? And that was like on every occasion, whenever the Eibishter said something, Moshe Rabbeinu found out this, yeah, and what else? And after that. The Alter Rebbe was the Moshe Rabbeinu of Chassidus. So when he came out of prison, which was a huge victory against the Menagdim, against the Jews who were against him, it was a huge victory, and people were very impressed. They were in awe. The Tsar himself, 50,000 people were ready to become Chassidim, seeing such a miracle. The Alter Rebbe said, no thanks. Don't become a Chassid because of a miracle. It's nicht emes. Nicht emes. I'm not interested. If you want to be a Chassid because your Avodas Hashem will be deeper, will be better, will be. You're going to become a chassid because I won. Nicht emes. So I think that Tzemach Tzedek said the Alter Rebbe could have had 50,000 more chassidim, but he insisted on emes. Bar levov. There's a story about a chassid in Poland. In Poland, every shtetl had a Rebbe. In Russia, after a few years, 2 generations, there was Lubavitch, and pretty much that was it. But in Poland, every shtetl had a Rebbe. So there was this chassid went looking for a Rebbe. He went from Rebbe to Rebbe, looking at this for something that inspires him. And he would spend a month. It wasn't stam window shopping. He would spend a month and he would follow the minhag and the learning. And then if it was not for him, he would be honest and he would tell the Rebbe that he's not staying, he's going to continue looking. One time he came to a Rebbe, stayed for a month, and then went to tell the Rebbe that he's moving on. The Rebbe said to him, don't leave, stay. He said, it's not my style, it's not, for me, I have to go. The Rebbe said, I'm telling you to stay. He said, but nicht. I can't. And he left. He walked down the stairs of the porch. There were 3 or 4 steps. But he tripped and fell, and broke his leg. So doesn't make sense. I mean, 3 steps, you don't break your leg. He fell off the steps and he broke his leg. He hobbles back in. He crawls back into the Rebbe. And he said, Rebbe, mit brechen Fies macht man nicht kein Chassidus. In other words, I have no doubt that it was your kpeden. And that I know I'm messing with something holy over here. Holy you are, aber mit brechen Fies. By breaking my leg, you're not going to make me into a chassid. So the Alter Rebbe said, you're excited because I won this fight. That's not a chassid. Need emes. Practically speaking, emes doesn't just mean when you do a mitzvah, do it with your whole heart. Emes means when you don't do a mitzvah, be honest about it. Don't complicate. You didn't do a mitzvah. Why? Mi ma'akiv se'er shebe'isa. Why did you do an aveda? Why didn't you do a mitzvah? Because you have a yetzer hara. Nay, I was going to do it. I was about to do it. I forgot. I woke up late. I was on the wrong side of the bed. This one told me, and the other one said this. Head off. Stop it. If you did an aveda, it's for one reason. A yetzer hara. Even in doing an aveda, you have to be tmimus. Emes. Emes. I heard once 2 bacharim talking. One bacher, they were chavedim. One bacher said to the other one, I watched a movie. No, this is very important. This is about science where it says that, and the second bacher said, no, wait a minute. You watched the movie because you have a yetzer hara. No, now tell me what the movie was about. Don't tell me you watched the movie because it's about this. No. You're a shegitz. You watched the movie because you have a yetzer hara. What was the movie about? Don't give me these terutzim. You're going to make it holy. It's called l'shem shamayim. Stop it. When you're sinning, mitanemes. You have to be tmimizdik all the time. Be atomim all the time. These excuses, your mind starts to play games, and you don't even know yourself when you're lying anymore. You lie to yourself even, and it's not good. Straight. Be straight. Women were not encouraged to learn Gemara. You know why? Because there are some things in the Gemara that are a little Malamda Tiflis, they're going to learn the facts of life. They shouldn't know. What? First of all, so don't learn those Gemaras. If a big Shas, can I know how to? So you can't learn any Gemara because of the certain pieces that they shouldn't. And why shouldn't they know and Bacharim should know? It's much worse for a Bachar. Much worse. The reason is, Gemara is machlekes. Asvara hin, asvara het. Ogishvog the svara, ogishvog the teretz, kasha. That can take away your tmimus. You can get into the habit. You say Shalom Aleichem, I have to say Aleichem Shalom because I'm from Shammai, you're from Hillel. I'm going to say the same thing you say. No, a Gemara cup. If you say a svara, I have to come up with a better svara. You ask me a kasha, I have to answer it. That's how you learn Gemara. The tmimus will go away. You don't want to lose the tmimus. In that case, why do Bacharim learn Gemara? Because you have a mitzvah of Gisa by Yom V'Layla. And you have to know a halacha. You have to know a din. But when it comes to Bacharim, you have to be aware. You're taki achacham, like Moshe Rabbeinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu was told, on chachmas, learn straight. Even the machlekes and it's a risk. And a lot of Bacharim suffer from this. You talk to a yeshiva Bachar, you can tell right away, even though he hasn't been in yeshiva for 20 years. How can you tell? Edrei takop. He can't say anything straight. A Gemara cup, we can grab him finger. So the Gemara he forgot already. Schon lang vergessen the Gemara. But that splitting hairs, you have to be careful. When you want to be a chacham, you have to be a chacham from the Haggadah. An ehrliche chacham. Straight. So one more story about the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, before he became famous, was traveling, and he came to a city that was very anti-Chassidus. It was the city of Shklov. He walked into the Beis Medrash, and he went over to the fireplace, to the oven, to warm up. Came out from the cold winter. In the Beis Medrash, that entire day, they were trying to figure out Pshat in a Gemara, in Erchem. There was a Maggid Shir, and he got stuck. He didn't know. So they went to ask the bigger Lomdim. Each one gave up an attempt at explaining the Gemara, and it wasn't satisfying. All day they debated and they looked and they checked and they segeet nicht. Finally, when all else failed, they disturbed Rabbi Yosef Kolbei, the biggest lamdan in the Beis Medrash. He was a chaver of the Vilna Gaon, and they wouldn't ask him stam, but after a whole day of trying, they interrupted him and they asked him to tell Pshat in the Gemara. So Rabbi Yosef Kolbei started giving Pshat in the Gemara. But he noticed that this stranger who came into the Beis Medrash is making with his shoulder like so gefällt ihm nicht mein Pshat? He was very surprised. So he went over and he said, Junger Mann, von wann bist du? Von wann is a junger Mann? He said, Junger Mann. In other words, derech eretz. So the Alter Rebbe said, yeah, that's the kasha me'ayin basa. So Yosef Kolbe said, don't play games with me. I have no time for this. I don't engage in milim de hedyeta. I don't engage in ordinary conversation. So the Alter Rebbe said that in Zohar it says that, and they were all Baki in Zohar. He says in Zohar it says that Malach Matat, who is the Sar HaPnim, one of the very high angels, is called Hedyet. So Hedyeta, ordinary, is not something to make, to dismiss so easily. Rabbi Kolbe was like mystified with this. He said, where are you coming from? So the Alter Rebbe said like this. The Gemara says, Moshe lo yoda, David yoda. Moshe lo yoda, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Kachatzeis laila, by Makas Becheres, Kachatzeis laila, around midnight. Because who can say exactly when midnight is? David HaMelech did know when midnight is. David HaMelech said, Chatzeis laila okum, I will get up at midnight, not around midnight. So how is it that David knows and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't? Moshe Rabbeinu is Chachma. The answer is that the ultimate knowledge Tachlis Yediyah comes from Lo Neda. It comes from humility. Moshe Rabbeinu was Chachma. David HaMelech was Malchus, Bittul, humility. Malchus, that's what Alter Rebbe said, Malchus weist alts. He's talking about himself. Malchus weist alts. And he who thinks that he knows Pshat in the Gemara in Erchen doesn't know Pshat. In other words, if you think you know, then you don't know. So Rabbi Yosef Kolbe said, so tell us Pshat. So the Alter Rebbe quoted the Gemara, word for word, and the Rashi, word for word, and everybody in the Beis Medrash realized there was no kasha. There was no question. It was so clear, it was so simple, that their question that they had been suffering and struggling with all day long, there's no question. So what the Alter Rebbe was telling them, there's a way of using your mind like a chacham that it's not tmimus, and therefore you're not going to know the answer. If you think you know the Gemara, then you don't know the Gemara. The only way to know the Gemara is if the Gemara tells you what it means. If you think you know what the Gemara means, that's not what the Gemara. That's what you think the Gemara. It's not the Gemara. You have to let the Gemara tell you what it means. That's called Chochma, but B'tmimus. Without, there's a habit that we have in learning. Explain the Gemara. I should explain the Gemara? How do you explain the Gemara? How do you explain the Gemara? This is the Gemara. This is Chachmosei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to explain the Gemara? Or even the Gemara needs you to explain it? You don't explain the Gemara. The Gemara explains itself to you. The Gemara tells you. You don't tell the Gemara. So what did Alter Rebbe do? Listen to the words. Say it straight. Look at the Rashi. Translate the words honestly. It will tell you what it means. You don't have to tell it. And if you don't understand what it means, it's because you're trying to explain it. You're not letting it explain itself. So try again. More tmimus. So there's a story about the Zusha, that he heard people that was learning a Gemara. He heard a kasha, he didn't know how to. Anyway, he went into his room and he cried. And he said, Rabbeinu Shalom Zusha vil verstehen. And he came out of the room. He cried. He said, Zusha wants to know, wants to understand. And he came out of the room and he understood. Is that called learning Torah? That's how you learn Torah? Come on. That's nevuah. It doesn't mean that he cried in his room and the information came from heaven and all of a sudden he knew. He did what all the people in the Beis Medrash debating the Gemara should have been doing. When you learn Gemara, you're basically asking the Eibishter to tell you what he means. That's how you learn. Whenever you understand Torah, whenever you understand the Gemara, whenever you understand the Pasuk Chumash, whenever you understand the Halacha, it told you. Otherwise, you did not understand it. If you think you understand the Gemara, you don't understand it. If it tells you, then you understand. So what Reb Zusha was doing is not a shortcut, getting around the need to learn. Everybody thinks Reb Zusha was not such a big Talmud Chacham. It's ridiculous. I don't know how he got that reputation, because he played simple. But so when he said Rabbeinu Shalom Zusha will wissen, will verstehen, that's how you learn. When you sit down to a Gemara, when you sit down to a Maimer, when you sit down to a Perek Tanya, when you sit down to a Shulchan Aruch, you first say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I want to know what you're saying. And then you let him tell you, not you tell him, what he means. So the Alter Rebbe cleared away many bad assumptions, wrong assumptions, habits. It was a cleanup job. And he got a lot of resistance. Because, traditional communities don't change so easily. Chodosh is also midiraisa. Any change comes difficult, even if it's so. Tzemach Tzedek once explained to the minister of education, the Tsar's minister, why all of a sudden, after 2,000 years without Chassidus, why all of a sudden we need Chassidus? This is obviously a question that the Jews gave the minister. Ask him why we need Chassidus. Tzemach Tzedek basically said like this: Torah is water, the source of life. Water can never become tameh. No matter how many people who are tameh go into a mikveh, the mikveh remains Because you can't pollute water. You can't corrupt water. So what are polluted lakes and rivers? And there's junk in the water. But the water itself. So what do you do when the water that is pure has accumulated foreign? You take the water and you put it over a fire. The fire burns away all the stuff that is not water, and what you're left with is clean water the way it always was. Divrei Torah eina mekablim tuma. But in the Divrei Torah you can add all sorts of tuma. Over the years, people are exposed to non-Jewish ideas, to Yetzer Hara, and you start to introduce things into Yiddishkeit, into Torah that don't belong there. Like, for example, modern pop psychology has kind of gotten all verpluntet and mixed up with Torah. You hear the modern speakers, modern rabbis, they're giving you a dvar Torah, and it's not Torah, it's a pop psychology, so there's a pasuk and a story from the Torah, but the rest of it is, like, for example, v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. The Torah is telling you that you have to love yourself first. So you have to love yourself first. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, in order to clean away the parts that are not Torah from the Torah, you have to put it over a fire. Chassidus is the fire, and it burns away the uninvited parts, so that the Torah goes back to being Mayim Chayim. Friedrich Rebbe writes in his diary that when the minister heard this, he was very impressed. And he said, wow, this is a deep, godly philosophy. Because they were telling him that it's a political thing, and they're just trying to get power, and they want to take over the community. He said, whoa, this is not political. This is a deep, godly philosophy. So that's what Chassidus is, and we need it now more than ever, because we're very smart, we're big chachomim, and when you use chachma, it's very easy to twist and turn. We have to get back to the straight, to the chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu. Chachma with tmimus, mit edelkeit, gleichkeit. No. And when you do that, it is mechayah nefashis mamash. Because Torah is supposed to be like mayim karim al nefesh hayefa. People learn Torah and it doesn't do anything for them. It's not because Torah is not mayim chayim, but because along with the Torah you're taking in all sorts of poison and pollution, toxic waste. To get rid of the toxic waste so that Torah can be mechayah you have to have Chassidus. And that's why the latest CD is called Amachaya. It's an inside joke. L'chaim. How are you? Good. Sound good. You live here?
I live in Park. Not far from here.
I've heard of the place.
Shalom Yosef.
I've been there a few times also. I'm enjoying it. It feels like home.
They went to visit a certain Abzusha. What is the secret of marriage? They married 7 years, the same lady. What's the secret of Abzusha? Never thought to divorce her. She said to divorce her, never. To kill her.
Rabbi Friedman is going to again. Also, Rabbi say, I just want to say that the Rav partially thanked all those responsible. We really want to give Yasha credit to Rabbi Teves, to Rabbi Tauber, and to Rabbi Vidger, who were really the driving force behind the library, the Emes. And just a ha'ora, this is not the Chanukah Zabayis, it's the pre-Chanukah Zabayis. So, Mr. Sharif, for sure will come, the real Chanukah Zabayis.
Amen.
Yerushalayim Rakayim.
Amen.
What? I don't think so.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Ja, normaal de Engels hebben. Ja. לא מה הוא האיש.
That's right.
זה דבש